It's not that deep. Everything love, lust, and life.
Sex. We talk about it so you can get better at it. We can all get better at it and maybe feel a bit happier in the process. It's not that deep. Or is it?
Hi, and welcome to our newest episode. My name's Andy, and I'm here today with my wife, Fran. And today's topic is we're going to be talking about Torture Garden, which is one of the world's biggest fetish club nights, which I think started out in London, and that's still its predominant home in lots of different nightclubs, but also has branched out now further across the UK, into the USA, Japan, Germany, basically all the kinky places on earth. So, Fran, you've been going to TG a lot longer than I've known you, so what is it, and how did you first get into going?
So I started going, I'm going to age myself quite heavily here, because I started going 2004, 2005-ish, when I was 18, straight, as soon as I went to uni. And it's basically the same as it is now, really, just a fetish night of different homes, and they're really extravagant, interesting nights. And then you get people who go to them in sort of 3 or 4 different camps of types of people. So you get people who go there who are just out for the fetish side of it, who tend to dress for the fetish side of it more. You get people who go out to have an extravagant night out, who dress in really sort of exuberant costumes, and they tend to be themes as well for each of the nights. Not always, but quite often. So there's quite often people of a particular style for certain months. And then you get people who are just there to have fun and have a night out, who tend to have a less extravagant costume but are comfortable and tend to want to dance a lot. So I tended to fit either in that category or in the extravagant category. And I think as we've got older, I think we've got more extravagant probably.
Yeah, I think that's certainly my experience. Is the more that we've gone together, is you realise that it's a show, isn't it?
Yeah,
so,
it's kind of like adult fancy dress, isn't it?
Yeah, so many people are there just want to show off their creativity or their personality, and combined with their kinky side, and it's fantastic. It really is a brilliant night, whether you're going with some dark intentions of exploring some really kinky things, or you're just going there for a really good night with friends and to observe people. It caters for both, doesn't it?
But it's also caters from people who've homemade their costumes as well, up to people who've spent thousands of pounds on their costumes. There's a full range of everybody, and from every walk of life as well, which I think makes it a really interesting crowd and a really fun night because of that.
Yeah, so I think we'll circle back to the costumes in a minute, because that's probably one of the most interesting things about it. But what should people expect then? I mean, from my experience, it is just a normal club night. You've got different music in different rooms, depending on the venue. But then you've also got acts on, which can border from fairly simple things like belly dancing through to some quite surreal stuff, like people doing some quite unusual sexual things on stage, through to my favourite personally was a man wearing a mattress who just danced around with his bottom half naked for 10 minutes and then jumped off the stage, and everyone just carried on with their night and ignored him.
Yeah, no one else watched that show. It was just you who watched that show.
I loved it. I thought it was
But
great.
also they quite often have fetishy shows. I think that's toned down a little bit over the years, because I've seen some quite strong fetish shows that I think they've toned down a bit. But they tend to have a fetish element to them, so there's quite often something a little bit darker edged. And also fashion shows as well. All the big latex makes tend to have a fashion show. There tends to be a lot of kind of cabaret and sort of just unusual acts, really.
Yeah, and that's the main bulk of the sort of the major areas. But then there's obviously smaller rooms set aside for a dungeon. Not necessarily every event we've been to lately, but so often there's a couples room where it's couples only, and you can use your imagination as to what's more likely to go on in there. Yeah,
and there's the main dance floor room is always quite big, and there tend to be things like poles or cages and things to give you something a bit more interesting as well in the space. And then usually a smaller room that tends to have slightly different music. So the main room tends to be quite dancey based. You don't tend to find that music anywhere else either, and I love the music from it. They call it's a funky house, acid house, that kind of thing, but it's dirty beats is what they call it, which you search for it, it's really, really hard to find. Tends to be very cool anyway. And easy, heavy dance kind of based stuff to dance to.
But yeah, I think whether you're single, you're going as a group of friends, you're going as a couple, I think if you're going there with the intention of just having a good club night that's different to normal, it ticks the boxes. If you're going there to be a proper kinky beast and do all sorts of sordid stuff or trying things for the first time, I think you fit in just as well, and I think it can cater to both. So what made you start going there back when you were at uni?
I've always been a bit different and a bit out there, and I used to hang around in Camden a lot, and I've heard sort of through the grapevine and through seeing leaflets and things about it, and so I always wanted to go. And then when I started going, I found it's a really safe place to be who you are and not be hassled and things. I used to go out at uni with a load of friends from uni who were all into the R&B clubs and things, and they tend to be quite meat markety. And you would think for a fetish club that would be a meat market kind of club, but they're really not. They're really safe because they've got rules. And so if people are bothering you, you have a place to go and you can get them ejected, I mean, if they're really bad. So people there are much more respectful, and I just always liked that aspect of it as well. And the dressing up side of it, I always used to think was really cool. You know, you are there to look as interesting and as weird as possible, and I love the idea of that.
Yeah, and I love the variation you get, because, you know, you'll have people who are 18, 19, look incredible, wonderful outfits or no outfits. You could easily just as commonly have a 60-year-old bloke who's walking around naked with nothing but a little hat on. And there's no judgment, everyone's happy, everyone gets on. And I agree with you, I've never seen anything that I thought, that's a little bit uncomfortable. You know, everyone's respectful. And I think you talk about sort of some clubs being a bit meat markety. I think a lot of the time in a lot of the sort of the relationships there, the women are in control a lot more as well, just because of a lot of the kinks that people have got. It does feel like there's probably more dominance for a lot of the women than you'd normally get in any sort of night like that.
And just that people are out to have a really good time and in every way possible, which I think you don't actually find that in a lot of clubs. There's a lot of sort of social elements to it, like, you know, can I go and talk to these people and stuff, and that's totally broken down at TG. You can go and talk to anyone and everyone, and it's very, very open, and I think that's one of the great things about it that's sort of come through the years and hasn't changed over time, which I really love about it.
And I remember when we first went, we'd been together probably 6-9 months, something like that, so we were still quite young and early in our relationship, and you told me about Torture Garden, I think probably the first time we'd ever met. You talked about it, and I thought, wow, that sounds like a world away from what I'm used to. But then when we first went, I can remember, because I'm quite an organised person, so I wanted to know every bit of detail. What do I need to wear? Where do I go? What do we do? How do we do this? For people thinking of going for the first time then, what would you say about outfits? Would you say keep it simple or go big?
I would go big as much as you can. There is a dress code, and you won't get in if you don't adhere to a dress code, which is, the dress code is you've got to be weird, really, and you've got to be fetish and or a really strong theme, rather than just going in outdoor clothes. You can't, unless you've made it kinky, you can't just go in outdoor clothes. And they have got tighter on that, I think, over time as well. But yeah, go for a theme and really go for it. There is always a really good cloakroom there, so you can go in whatever you want and then get changed there. There's a lot of people do that, and we've spent a lot of time putting outfits together when we get there. Yeah,
I think of the last time we went, your outfit was largely done. You had it all on and just a big coat over the top. Mine needed a little bit more putting on once we got there, because I didn't want to sit too strangely in a cab going across London. But yeah, it's quite relaxed, isn't it? And we just pretty much got changed quickly in the entranceway, chuck the bags in the cloakroom, and then you're off and away. And the reality is most people don't wear very much. So if you're going in the summer, it's great, because, you know, you can pretty much just go in your outfit, and if you're not comfortable walking through the streets in it, you can just chuck a t-shirt over the top. If it's in the winter, you're probably going to wear a coat with you and things like that, especially when you get our age. But it's quite easy to chuck stuff in the cloakroom, isn't it? Just get on with the night.
I think the first time I went, I saw people sort of heading in. You get to the area and you're like, where is TG? And then you can just see this crowd of people heading towards it, looking particularly weird. And then you're like, oh, that's where we're going. And I remember seeing on the way in someone who was dressed in pretty much nothing with a C3 rain mac as their only sort of outside outfit to go in. I think there's a lot of people who are quite out there with what they wear anyway, so they're fine travelling in it. But I've generally put a coat over the top and try not to look too weird on the tube and stuff. Although I have once taken a pair of 6-foot butterfly wings on the tube as an outfit with me to go to TG before.
Does not surprise me.
It was really hard to get on and off as well, and everyone decided that they'd want to touch them. So maybe think that one through.
So I think, from my aspect, I think the first time we went, the one thing to consider is the outfits. What about sex, though? I think there's always a misconception is in that sex and fetish is always the same and the same thing and will happen at the same event. And I remember the first time we go, and I said to you the first few times, I haven't seen anyone having sex. And you were like, you're not looking hard enough then, because people probably are. But it's not like too in your face in the sense of there's an expectation that you need to, or you need to try and get involved or do that yourself, is there?
No, and I've gone a lot of times without doing anything at all. But equally, you can do things in places, that the toilets are used a lot. There's couples' rooms, and there are places that you can find where you don't have to be on display if you want to do something like that. But equally, most people, I think now especially, but I think even back then actually, most people go to have a good time, and then the sex side of it is just if it happens sort of thing.
I think that's the hardest thing to get your head around. So, we've been to Ministry of Sound a number of times there, haven't we? And, a normal club night there, you might see a little bit of friskiness going on, but it's only going to go so far before it's stopped firmly in its tracks. Whereas, you've got the same bar staff, you've probably got the same security, but the rules are very different. So, if you decide you want to start having sex on one of the sofas or one of the seats at the side of the dance floor, it's fine. I wouldn't say it's encouraged, but it's definitely not a problem.
No, but you have got to be aware that people will watch and will join in if you give them the green light for that. You just sort of got to be aware that people will watch. I mean, you're there for that thing, and they're there to see.
Yeah,
so
I think but I think most people probably are going.
Yeah, if you're going to have sex in public, I think you're probably going to be.
Well, let's be honest. The first time we ever had sex in public was at TG, wasn't it?
Yeah,
properly.
Yeah, and it's something that you don't realise turns you on until you get there, sort of thing. I think there's always been a bit of a fear around it, that in front of other people it's kind of taboo. But actually, it becomes, once you get over that hurdle, it becomes quite a thrill, doesn't it? And it really spurs you on.
Definitely.
I think one thing I've seen, TG's not always at specific events that hold TG, specific places that hold TG regularly. One I've seen is the first time they had it at a new venue, there was a girl on the bar, just as they were sort of clearing up the bar for the night, and she had a number of guys around her, and they were just trying to clean round her bottom, just trying to clean the bar just round her bottom, and laughing at it, because they're I think TG staff now are just sort of used to just leave it and we'll clean it at the end sort of thing, but they were like, no, we want to go home, could you just get out the way?
I think the main tips are choose an outfit that you're comfortable in, but don't be afraid to be as extravagant as you like.
I'd say bring a bag so that you can put multiple things to wear afterwards, or like big coats and stuff. So bring it all in a bag, then you can just pay the one thing. Lots of people bring full-on suitcases, and I mean even people, especially if they're bringing proper fetish gear, will bring the suitcase in with them. But yeah, having a full kit to put on afterwards, because you generally don't want to go home at like 2 a.m. wearing whatever it was that you've been wearing all night, especially when it's cold.
Yeah, and I think also if you're going there with the curiosity or the temptation to maybe have sex in public for the first time, or to experience that in a club environment, I think it's a safe place to do so, definitely. It's not like a swinging club where there's an expectation that
No.
or a pressure maybe that you feel you need to do something more than you're necessarily comfortable with. But I think it's a place where you can easily go and not even have sex cross your mind, and you'd have a great night.
Yeah. The bars are typical London bars, so they are really expensive, but they're well stocked and they're easy to get to. The last thing I was going to say was that the best thing you can do if you want to go is in a group is to bring as many people as possible. It's one of those places that really benefits from having a group sort of situation, and not to be worried about what other people think of you when you go there. I mean, everyone's really friendly, and it's generally a great night if you just throw yourself into it.
I think that's great advice. From everything that I've seen there, somebody will be dressed weirder than you. Somebody will be wearing less clothes than you. It's guaranteed. So there's no shame, is there?
Somebody will be wearing more clothes than you as well. Some
Yeah.
people go completely suited up.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, that's all we've got time for today. So hopefully, if you're thinking of going to TG for the first time or a similar event, that might be useful to you. As ever, drop us a comment if it's of interest, or you've got any questions. And please do drop us a review, leave us any feedback, and recommend to your friends.
Sex. It's not that deep.